This happened a pretty long time ago to my sister and I. She was 3 and I was 8, and I'm 26 now. We lived in Florida at my mom's boyfriend's house, which was on a private road. The neighborhood was filled with mostly nice people, except for one. They called him Nightmare Nate, and he just happened to be our neighbor. His trailer was almost condemned. He had tons of trash in his yard, and he had drunken fights with his wife all the time, and had a very skewed idea about where the property line was. Mike, my mom's boyfriend, told us about all these crazy stories and how he earned his nickname from more normal people in the neighborhood. At this point, we had only been there for a few days, and it was summer break. It was really hot, and Mike had a pool in the backyard. My sister and I love swimming, so naturally we begged my mom until she let us go and swim. Now, the kitchen window faces the yard, and she had a good view of us in the pool, and she was making us dinner. We had been out there for about 30 minutes having a blast, and it was then that my little sister noticed Nate leering at us from over the fence. He was in his dirty underwear, gut hanging out that he was rubbing with a beer in his hand. He was in his dirty underwear, gut hanging out from the beer that he was rubbing in his hand. My sister and I were grossed out, and we looked at each other and started laughing because it was so weird. And I guess we laughed it off and continued playing to make the situation less uncomfortable. I honestly don't know why we didn't tell my mom, but hey, we were just kids. I wish I could have known things would have got worse, but I didn't. Fast forward another few days, and this time me and my sister were in the front yard playing. We were pretty close to the fence and were making mud pies in the dirt. Apparently we were too loud and too close to Nate's yard for his liking. And so a few moments go by, and his wife comes over to the fence. Her name was Maggie, and she was actually a really nice lady. She asked us our names and what we were doing. We told her and said that we were making mud pies for our mom. She smiled and asked us if we could move away from the fence because Nate didn't want us to play there. We just looked at each other and said, okay, and we moved. We didn't want to cause trouble, and we were kind of confused by it, but didn't question it. So later on that evening, Mike comes home from work and we were playing in our bedroom, and all of a sudden we heard a bunch of shouting out front. My sister pretty much ignores it, but I ran over to the open window, looked out to see Nate screaming at Mike. At the time, I didn't know what little sluts and keep those bitches on a leash meant. But I do now. Basically, he was saying that us, little girls in our bathing suits and sundresses, were teasing and provoking him. Mike laid into the guy, telling him to get the hell off his property before he had to get the cops out there. It wasn't until that Christmas that we had another Nate incident. We got 2 adorable little boxer puppies from Mike for Christmas. Naturally, we love them, and yes, they're dogs. They're gonna bark at some point. It didn't take long for Nate to start complaining about our dogs, that they were shitting on his lawn, and that they were too aggressive for our neighborhood, which was bullshit. They were puppies, and good-mannered, and how Mike ought to shoot them, get the girls a cat instead. Unfortunately, out of nowhere, our dogs got really sick. We took them out to the vet and found out that they were poisoned with Drano. Mike immediately suspected Nate of it and tried to get the cops involved, but they couldn't do anything about it unless they caught him in the act. We did everything we could to keep watch of the dogs because luckily they didn't die. We kept their food inside because my mom suspected that their food had been poisoned. Well, unfortunately, a few days later, my sister and I discovered our dogs dead on our back porch. It had been strangled with chicken wire, and Nate had that stuff all over his yard. We didn't hear anything during the night, and the dogs were inside the house, so till this day I'm not sure how Nate managed to do this, unless he took them to his house and killed them and brought them back. But I do know that he was in our house, and I'm terrified of that, because no one heard him. Mike stormed over to Nate's house and heard him shouting from inside their trailer. Nate was in the middle of an argument and started to beat his wife, and Mike went in there and kicked his ass. I remember my mom freaked out and trying to keep us away from the dogs, and overhearing about the fight later on that night when Mike was telling my mom about it. My mom called the cops and they came out to look at the dogs, deciding that they had enough evidence now to try and do something about Nate. They took him to jail for suspected animal cruelty and on the domestic assault on Maggie. At this point, Nate had been gone for a few months, and Maggie asked Mike and my mom to come over and help to clean up the trailer because she was leaving him. Mike went out to the shed and started cleaning it out because there was a lot of heavy junk, and Maggie and my mom stayed inside to get the easier stuff. What Mike found in that shed haunts me to this day, and I'm getting sick to my stomach as I write this. Nate had an old box with a bunch of pictures of kids in it. It had been tipped over in his work table, and all the pictures had spilled out, which is why Mike even noticed it. It was the only thing in that shed that wasn't completely trashed. At first, Mike thought it was just Nate's relatives because most of the pictures were normal, but as he started to go through them, they got more and more suggestive. He even found a bunch of pictures of my sister and I in there as well. Pictures of us playing in the yard, in the pool, and even pictures zoomed in from the outside of our bedroom window. It was totally disgusting, and Mike immediately showed them to my mom and Maggie wound up taking them down to the police station. If the dogs weren't enough, him having been outside of our house while we were all asleep, knowing he had taken disgusting pictures of kids, is completely mortifying as I look back on this. Nate, let's never meet again. When I was a kid, I lived with my single mother and my baby brother. We had a cute little house close to the downtown area of our quaint little town. One summer, my mother caught a man peeping in through the windows while she was changing in her bedroom. We were freaked out and her boyfriend lived a few hours away, so we did the best we could by getting blackout curtains and being a lot more proactive about locking our doors and windows. I was young, so I don't remember much. I know they reported it to the police and someone managed to get the guy's address, but nothing ever came of it. I guess they had to catch him in the act in order to actually do anything. But again, I was young. I don't remember the exact details. That's not the story though, but rather an explanation as to why we have so much security on our house. This is the real story. The neighbor boy, who was a few years older than me, would occasionally mow our lawn and hang out around the house. He would always turn up and come by to our yard if I was outside, but it wasn't like the friendly neighbors stopping by. He legitimately lurked, appearing from behind the landscape of our fence. He never even announced himself, and he was always watching me in a way that made me extremely uncomfortable. I was fairly aware and alert as a kid, meaning I'd heard enough horror stories that it made me feel uneasy. I acted on it. If someone gave me bad vibes, I'd hide or find an adult. This feeling even drove me to bite a doctor once. And that neighbor kid freaked me the fuck out. Well, one day when I was walking home from school, he stopped me. I was in 5th grade, but he asked me how old I was, if my mom was working, if I had a boyfriend, and so on. I was nice and answered him, but kept it short to get home. because he was making me very uneasy. I got inside my house and locked the door. Not 5 minutes later, he was there ringing the doorbell. I didn't answer, but quietly peeked out the peephole to make sure that he went away. He was talking to himself under his breath and didn't leave for several minutes before finally giving up. This sort of thing happened a few more times. Usually in the hours between from when I got home and from school, and when my mom got home. I never answered though. A few months later, when winter had hit, it was getting dark outside by 4 or 5 p.m. and we had a foot of snow on the ground. I was running a bath to get ready for bed, and had perched on the counter waiting for the tub to fill. Still fully clothed, we had a window over the bathtub with a curtain that I was a bit paranoid about. So I had put my shampoo and conditioner bottles along the sill to make sure the curtain stayed closed and no one could peek in. That night I heard something like snowmobiles going through the alleyway, so I kept lifting the curtain when I heard the noise, trying to figure out what it was. The third time I raised the curtain, I saw the boy looking at me. I screamed. Called for my mom, told her what happened, but she blew it off. Apparently, he must have seen our original peeping Tom and decided that he would try it as well. After that, I wound up moving in with my dad, as he had a security system and my bedroom was on the 2nd floor. Although I was and still am paranoid about peeping Toms, about a year later, just before my mom moved, the neighborhood kid was implicated in the murder of his caretaker and wound up incarcerated. I am a teen mom of a beautiful 2-year-old girl. When I was pregnant with her, my parents turned against me. They didn't kick me out, but they got noticeably distant. And they were a lot more strict than the average parents. With my parents showing little support and my now fiancé always helping his father with his fencing company, when I needed help or had any questions, I went to my neighbor Linda. Linda's about double my age. She's divorced and has a son who's apparently all grown up and no longer lives with her, so she lives alone. I always looked up to Linda because during my pregnancy she was always there for me and provided me with all kinds of things. My parents didn't think my close relationship with Linda was healthy, but my fiancé told me that it was a good thing that I have someone like her to guide me, and I agreed with him. But after B was born, Linda and I started to grow apart. Although we still talked and I let her come over to visit B every once in a while, around this time is when I realized something about Linda was a little off. I didn't think too much of it though. She seemed a little awkward around B and didn't really know how to hold her or play with her, which I thought is pretty odd considering she had her own son. I figured that it could have just been because it had been a long time. After a while, a little bit before B's birthday, Linda and I pretty much stopped talking completely, except for a few "how are yous" and every now and then. But 5 months ago changed that. Linda told me that she had been seeing this guy, and that's why her and I haven't been talking as much. And she had also told me that she was pregnant. Of course I felt happy for her, and I told her that when she has her baby, her and B can be playmates. This led to us becoming close and talking again, although I don't feel as if it was as close as we were before. Just recently, a couple days ago, she told me that her and her boyfriend would be going up to the north for the 4th of July, and they'll be staying there for a few days. And she gave me a spare key and asked me if I could feed her pet for her. Obviously I agreed, so on Friday night, the 4th of July, they left. On Saturday evening, I went to her house to feed her bird, and everything went pretty normal. It was the first time I had been in her house since she told me she was pregnant, and I saw that she already had a little nursery for her baby set up, and I decided to take a picture. Afterwards, I just went home. The next day I went in at around the same time and fed her bird and then went back home. Later that night I got into an argument with my mom because I dropped B off at my fiance's house. And she got mad because she thought that the baby should be with the both of us. But she was not the one allowing me to stay over his house at his house for the night, so I left out in anger. And with nowhere to go, I quickly returned to Linda's house. I just decided to stay out in the living room and watch TV for a little, but it got boring quick, so I just decided to skim through the house for a moment. I was trying to find a picture of her and her son, or boyfriend on the wall or something, because I've always wondered what they look like, but there wasn't any. She had a couple pictures of herself, and then one with her and an older looking woman, her mom I'm guessing. And this is when things got pretty creepy. I walked down a little hallway that's past the nursery and just opened the closet. I looked down at the bottom and there was this really nice black box with gold lettering on it, and so I opened it and instantly turned red. Inside was a picture of my daughter that was uploaded on Facebook about 2 weeks ago. Here's a picture of the box and the picture of my daughter. Inside was a picture of a doll that looked very similar to my daughter. Here's a picture of both. Compare the two and you'll notice the similarities between them. When I saw this, I had never felt so uncomfortable in my life, but the part that really hit me was the letter that was in the box as well. I don't remember the exact words, but I'm 100% sure it was from a guy who designs custom dolls, and it went something like, "Linda, Rachel, and I had so much fun creating this doll for you and your daughter B. Be sure to take care of it. Sincerely, Dan." I got chills after seeing all of this, and I went home. When I got back, I didn't say anything to my parents about it, but my mom asked me where I went, and I told her I went over to Linda's. We started small talking about Linda, and my mom mentioned the fact that she doesn't look like she's getting any type of baby belly. Of course, I've noticed this before, but I've always assumed it was because Linda's pretty skinny, and that it would have shown up soon, but after 5 months, it does seem a bit crazy how her stomach is still flat, and after seeing that doll, it makes me question a lot about Linda. Right now it is 5 in the morning, and I can't sleep at all because of all that is happening. I haven't told anyone about it yet, but I'm definitely going to tell my mom about it when I get a chance tomorrow. I'll probably end up telling my fiance about it too. I don't know how he's going to react about it though. Also, Linda comes back the day after tomorrow.